Hi guys, welcome to the World Class Happiness channel. I'm Dominic. Today's message is about mental health and maintaining good mental health over the Christmas period. It's the 22nd of December right now. Obviously that's a time where people are getting ready for Christmas, they're getting excited about Christmas, but it's also that time where you have certain individuals who are feeling down, more down than normal, because everyone around them seems to be having fun and getting into the Christmas spirit, and they don't feel like they can because of their mental health issues. Now I obviously I want everyone to be happy. That's what this channel's about, and part of being happy is looking after your mental health. However, I do have a little bit of a thing about talking about it all the time, and the message that we hear all the time these days is that you need to talk about your mental health. You need to talk to your friends and kind of put out there that you're struggling and that you need help and all that, and I agree with a lot of that. The only problem I have with that a little bit is that when we're putting that out there all the time, that is all you're focused on, and that can become kind of part of your identity, and I don't think that's always the best thing. You then get also labelled as somebody who struggles and somebody who needs help, and then they put that over to you a little bit, and that I feel sometimes that that then makes the problem worse. I'm part of on Facebook, I'm part of some sort of mental health groups, just for the same reason that I'm doing this, really, to help people. And on those groups, bearing in mind they're actually meant to help people with their mental health, I see a lot of people talking about their problems and their mental health issues. And to be honest, when I've kind of like visited those groups and stuff, I come off feeling more depressed than ever, and I kind of think that's counterproductive to what the group's actually trying to achieve, which is try and help people with their mental health. And I just think that's because people are on there talking about it and sort of like almost consoling each other, and they're there, we'll all stick together, we'll all kind of like whatever. And I don't always think that that's the best thing. I think what people need to do is talk about their issues, by all means, and that's a good thing. But in order to find solutions, in order to get help, rather than talk about your issues in order to kind of complain to a certain extent, for want of a better phrase, or want of a better word, really. And I'm not telling people that they have to suffer in silence and they have to bottle it all up, because that's not what we want to do. That's almost the opposite to getting help. So don't think that's what I'm saying at all. That's not. What I'm trying to say is that if you are going to kind of get help, get the correct help and get the right advice, and I think it's possible to self-help. I'm no expert on mental health, so don't kind of just look to me as the person to listen to on this. But in my experience, I would imagine that people often improve when they're focusing on the correct things. So if you're speaking to people in order to get solutions, get help, then immediately they're getting you to focus on more positive things straight away. And there's evidence to prove this to a certain extent. I'm evidence to prove the point to a certain extent. And I've never been depressed. I've never been at that point. I've never been a person who ever thought about things like suicide. So I'm maybe the wrong person to judge and give my opinions on it to an extent. But from my perspective, I was a bit inconsistent. Sometimes I felt really brilliant and like I could take on the world, and other times I felt like I struggled a little bit. But I would say I was always generally happy. I was always a happy person. I always, and that was my reason for writing the book in the first place, because I was always happy and I wanted to find out why. And in writing the book, I found out that it's because I was always focused on positive things. And if you look at the evidence from other people's perspective. So let's say somebody who we know has had depression to an extent where they are literally on the point of suicide. So if we take somebody famous like Tyson Fury, for example, who's been quite open about all this, he was at a point where, you know, he had everything that he could possibly want. He had, you know, he was married when he had kids, and he had success, and he had titles, he had glory, and he had a lot of love from people, love from his family, love from the fans, and he had everything. He had everything material wise in terms of cars and houses, and you know, he didn't want for anything, and he was still desperately unhappy. And what he was kind of thinking was that, you know, I've got everything, I should be happy, but I'm not. And because of that, it actually made him felt less happy. And the only way he changed was to realise that he needed to focus on something else. So the main thing originally was to focus on becoming heavyweight champion of the world again, but that wasn't it. It was the progression from where he was in terms of like the small goals, the exercising daily, the you know, the getting out of bed, making his bed, whatever it might have been. Those small things are what kind of set him back on that correct path, and having a sort of like a main goal in the future, and just setting daily goals, which, like I said, was probably just like going for a mile run. I think to start with, he could barely run 100 meters up the road before he had to stop, because he struggled so much, because he'd got to a position where he was so fat and unfit. He was really struggling. But once he got momentum, he was then able to focus on slightly more positive things, and then, you know, it's a vicious circle, and gradually he's spiraling upwards. But you know, the thing was, he never took medication. Never took medication, and he was offered medication. I think he did take it very briefly, but then realised that weren't for him. But that kind of proves really that, because he helped himself, and helped himself obviously get out of the position that he was in, kind of really proved that he didn't need medication. And I think that is probably the case for 90%, 99%, however you know many it is. I think that people very rarely need actual sort of medication, because they can actually manage to self-help and get out of it themselves by focusing on the smaller things, which gradually lead to the bigger thing that they're maybe possibly after. And I think this is something that anyone could do. Ricky Hatton was another one. You know, obviously that's another boxer and stuff like that, but he was in a similar position where he'd won a lot of things and done well, had everything he wanted, and got to this point where everything seemed a little bit meaningless after that. And it was just then, I think, the birth of his daughter, which kind of then turned him around. That was the switch. But what you got to realise is that whether it's Tyson Fury, Ricky Hatton, Vinnie Jones, I think, was another one. And what you got to realise is these people turned it around themselves. They decided, right, this is the point where I'm going to help myself. And this is the point where I'm now going to change things. And they put things in place to actually move themselves up. And once they started on that path, it was then one thing leading to another, but it was consistent work, consistent focusing, or consistently focusing on the correct things, and consistently building into the person that they are today. There's loads of examples. Jason Fox, the guy who's on SAS, the SAS program, he's another one. I read his book, and he was on the point of suicide. But in all these cases, these people have got themselves out of the problems. And you might be thinking, well, these people are obviously quite special people. They're fighters and people, like, you know, who probably could do that anyway. But that's, you know, I'm sure there are countless people who have done similar things. They've got their own similar stories, and they're just normal people. They're people who you don't expect to be tough necessarily. So if you are one of those people, we'd like to hear from you. If you can leave maybe part of your story, or maybe a link or something that kind of leads to your story, or just, you know, just in a few sort of words or a paragraph or two, just confirm that maybe you've done it, and maybe give us some ideas on how to help. For Tyson Fury, it was training. For other people, it might be getting a job that helps people or whatever. And yeah, if you can give us some clues on what you've done and how you've helped yourself. You know, I'm giving, in my book, it kind of tells you my story to a certain extent. I use YouTube a lot. You know, certain videos about happiness and you know, ways to help and motivate yourself. Like I said, I was already happy, so I'm probably not the best example, but I felt that I did get better and stronger just by watching video after video after video and finding knowledge to help myself. And now it's part of my identity. The identity for me is that I'm a happy person. I've always been a happy person, but now I've written the book, it's like I can't ever really be seen to not be happy to a certain extent. And that's not being fake, that's just now reconfirmed what I was already, which is I'm the happy guy. And now that's almost stops me now from ever getting unhappy or ever being kind of, you know, struggling with my mental health, because I'll always think, well, there's always a way of sorting it out. I'm a guy who can definitely sort it out, and that's nothing to do with me being better than you, or having any kind of special sort of like power or knowledge. It's really just my identity. It fits with my identity that I'm a happy person, and I'll always be that happy person. So you've got to kind of, you know, get yourself to that place by focusing on positive things, whatever it might be for you, because it could be different for everybody, and then gradually building up and getting momentum in the right direction. Okay, so as I said, put anything that you think may help us in the comments below. If you're liking the channel, then obviously subscribe, and we'll see you in another video. Cheers.